So thank you very much, guys, for the opportunity that we've had, and happy Sabbath to everybody. I hope we've all had a good day, and if we didn't, the Sabbath is here, and we can rest and rest in the Lord. And of course, we continue. This is our day 5. Can you imagine that we've been speaking about money for 4 days, and this is day 5, and we still have not fought. So you can't talk about money without fighting. So I hope you try that at home. Okay, so if you go through the whole idea that we were trying to push this week was to say, does the Bible teach us how to manage money, how to grow a better relationship with money? And I hope we've demonstrated that the Bible actually does. And therefore, we can never accuse God of asking us for something He has not given us direction how to manage. And that is why when you read, I think it's Ellen White, Christ Object Lesson, she says His biddings are His enablings. And in other words, each time God gives a command, the command comes with power to do. It already comes pregnant with the ability to do. And we thank God that we've been able to demonstrate that. Now tonight it's Sabbath, and we are supposed to be resting, but we are discussing a topic that might not allow our minds to rest. So I've deliberately entitled it The Basics of Investing, so that we really stick to the basics. You see that the idea of investing, it normally intimidates a lot of us, simply because of the jargon that gets used. And many a times when we are intimidated by something, we then stop participating. Yet, if you are interested in building wealth, not just today, but for the future, you can't avoid investing. Otherwise, you're not going to build wealth. And I want to spend, as usual, a few minutes making a case for investing, a few minutes making a case and showing that even the Bible says that we must do something about the future, like we've been doing the whole time. So tonight we are talking, excuse me, about the basics of investing. Again, it's such a broad topic, and you will realize as you go through it that each thing that we'll be speaking about probably needs 3 hours on its own. So we'll try and cramp it into 45 minutes with an idea of creating enough awareness to demonstrate that investing is accessible to everybody, number one. Number two, to demonstrate that investing is part of building our wealth. And of course, tomorrow, when we then close the Sabbath at Vespers, we are going to take it easy a little bit and say, what is the point of everything that we've been discussing this week? So I hope you're not going to miss that. I'm just going to be a bit relaxed, but we'll put it all together within a certain context. Now, tonight we are talking about investing, and I want to, as always, we share the verses that we're going to base our discussion on, so that we are comfortable, because this is a Christian setting, we are comfortable that we are still talking about something that God also has given us some direction on. And once I've read the verses, I won't necessarily find you a verse for the interest rate of South Africa. For that, we'll use common sense. But we'll be applying our common sense to the principles that we would have read about in the Bible, so that the rest of the time, we are then applying the Bible into our life. So the Bible has a very interesting verse found in Proverbs chapter 13, verse 22, which I want us to think about. And it says this, it says that a good person leaves an inheritance for his children's children. So it talks about generational wealth. And we know that when you read the Bible and you read that the Jewish economy also emphasized the idea of inheritance. And it was so crazy that you even find guys fighting about inheritance and trying to come up with certain tricks. You remember the story of Joseph and Esau, and we can talk about it another time, because there's some interesting things there. I know we always say Esau was stupid, but Esau also understood what came with the inheritance, and he probably was not interested in that responsibility. But you can see that an issue of inheritance is there. Now, here's my concern, which should concern us also. We will all agree that perhaps many of us, especially those who were excluded from economic participation, so those races and those genders that were excluded because of apartheid, or even the chauvinistic society that we had. Did you know, by the way, that it was only around 1998 that South Africa passed a law that says actually women are also an equal economic entity as men? So over and above the issue of apartheid, we also had an issue of a chauvinistic society that looked at another gender as less of an economic entity. I mean, there were women back in the day. For a woman to enter into contracts, they needed the permission of a man. That's why some men think they are the only ones who must give people permission. It's a very weird type of thinking. So all these kind of socio-economic issues may have led for some of us to have had our parents not leaving us any inheritance because they have nothing to speak of. But we have an opportunity because of where we are now to do better than our parents. We already are at a point where many of us are earning 10 times what our parents used to earn. But here's what worries me. Even though at income-wise, and that's why I keep on stressing, you'll see in some of the lectures that we've had, that the idea of the middle class being defined only by income is problematic for wealth. Because if I define you by income, I then start assuming that income is equal to net worth, and it is not. Wealth is built by how much of that income I'm able to keep and invest and grow and make assets out of. Now here's my worry, that while we are earning more than our parents, most of us, our situation may be worse than our parents, right? Because if you think about it, if you look at the statistics, now remember, the Bible says that a good person leaves an inheritance for his children's children. So there's an expectation of generational wealth according to this verse. But look at what evidence we are able to bring. Look at this. The statistics in South Africa, remember I said that sometimes we see too many graphs and maybe I must give you rest from graphs. The statistics are saying this. They're saying that if we're 100 in a room and all of us are working, and an average person will work about 40 years. So all of us are waking up every morning for 40 years. It says, the statistics are saying this, that if we're in a room of 100 and all of us are working, only 6 of us in the room would have accumulated enough during those 40 years to be able to afford their retirement. And that's a very worrying thing. Now, the Bible is saying that you should be thinking generational wealth. And the statistics are saying, forget leaving something for your children. Only 6 of us can afford our own lives. Forget the children, just when you reach 65. Only 6 of us can afford that. Forget the thing of inheritance. And the number of us are living off the state. The number of us are living off our children. Now, you are sitting there and you're saying, but Mina, I'll be better than my parents because I won't expose my children to black tax. Now, statistics are also showing that many young professionals, when they change jobs, they cash their pension, which means they're borrowing from the future. And many of them might end up with a future they cannot afford and become a burden on their children simply because of the choices that they are making. Now, the other thing, and I'm going to skip all of this because we don't have time, the other verses that we will dwell on that will inform the discussion tonight. Proverbs 21 verse 20, it says this, it says, a wise person saves for the future, but a fool is to punga, spends whatever they get. And then the Bible, we've already read the story of the ants, that the ants understand that they must prepare their food in the summer because winter is coming. And I'm going to demonstrate to you why investing is important for preparing the future and why the future has more winters than summers. And if you're not prepared for it. But then there's a caution that the Bible comes up with, and I think it's an important caution when it comes to investing and all those things, because we've seen a lot of these get-rich-quick schemes. I mean, in Mnambiti, where I'm from, where the guy called Skumza, who said he can triple people's money within 3 weeks, and people literally went and resigned from work and cashed their pension and put it all with Skumza. In fact, the queues were so long, and people were even almost waking up every morning to go and throw their money. And of course, a few weeks later, Skumza was nowhere to be found. Now, the Bible had already warned us if we cared to open it. It said this in Proverbs 13 verse 11. It says, wealth from get-rich-quick get rich quick schemes quickly disappear, and wealth from hard work grows over time. The Bible already gives us a warning against certain pyramid schemes that may get us into trouble. Not all pyramid schemes can get you into trouble, but many of them get you into trouble. And the Bible says, can you just take some heed towards that? So those are the type of verses that we look at. Now let's get into this idea of the basics of investing. Remember, we are talking to people, and I must always say this, because we sometimes are not talking to everybody. You know, now we are talking to people who are interested in building wealth. We are talking to people who are interested in growing wealthier as the day goes by. Tomorrow we'll deal with to what end? I'm getting wealthy for what? We'll deal with that. But we are still talking to people who are accumulating wealth. And we are saying that wealth grows if I have more assets than liabilities. And that's really, this is something we must always remember, so that even in our investments, I've heard people calling everything an investment. No, my brother, this car is an investment. And we thought he's talking about the taxi where he's making money, but he's talking about the transport for himself. It's an investment, right? But wealth grows when assets that generate income are higher than liabilities. And you only grow if you're accumulating assets, right? Now, there's also two parts, and I must say this because it is very easy to think wealth is only accumulated by employees. I must say that there are two routes to building wealth. You can build wealth as an employee. There's a formula for that. You can build wealth as an entrepreneur. There's a formula for that. If you look at the formula for building wealth as an employee, which is most of us, and I know that everybody has a business card these days. They are founder of this and the founder of that. It's fine, but there's a whole lot of other people who are employees, and you want to also show them that you can also build wealth, but there's a formula to it, and it probably needs a bit more work than somebody who's building wealth through entrepreneurship. The wealth formula for building wealth out of a salary is that I must earn a salary and I must use a portion of my salary to buy investments, because I only build wealth if I accumulate enough assets. So I must go and get a salary. So my salary plus investment will help me build wealth. And we already know that it's quite a difficult way to build wealth, but it's not impossible. It needs a lot of discipline. That is why we started off on Monday by talking about the way we think and our emotions, because this formula, it takes a long time, but it needs a lot of discipline. And of course, one thing we must agree on is that if I'm building wealth through a salary, it might take a bit of a long time. It's not impossible, but it takes a long time. If you think about it, very few of us can work for more than one employer. Huh? You remember, if you are building wealth through a salary, you are selling a commodity called your time and your skill for a price. Unfortunately, very few of us can sell our skill to more than one employer. There are other countries where people are working so hard that I know, for example, I was in South Korea one time, and I heard people have more than one job. So they start in the morning somewhere, and then at 5:30, they start another job, understanding that they only have one skill and one time they need to spread it. But very few of us can be able to do that. So already you are limited to the number of customers you can sell your skill. And of course, when it comes to jobs, we already learned yesterday when we were dealing with financial emergencies that you can lose your job anytime. And then suddenly it has affected your wealth formula, which is why we spoke about that. And sometimes people can break away from the formula by maybe becoming wealthy, becoming famous. So if I'm famous, I'll make more money, and therefore that's how I will build my wealth. But and it's true, famous people, we know Trevor Noah one time, last year, I think the year before, his net worth, he made about 400 and something million rands. So you can make money by being famous. And we know many people who are famous who are making money. But here's the problem. If you think about it, if you just think about the Idol show, right? The queues are so long. They are so long, but only one person wins as an idol. So even if I say I'll build my wealth by being famous, the queue is very long, and not all of us become famous. You know, in comedians who are not like Trevor Noah or whoever else. In fact, some of us think we are comedians ourselves, but not as good as Trevor Noah. So not all of us will make it. Of course, some people say, I might fast track my wealth by actually climbing the corporate ladder. And of course, it is possible because people who are business leaders, who are CEOs, they make more money than people who are running businesses. I mean, some of these guys will earn 122 million rands every year, and there's very few businesses I know that can make that much money. So one person can make it if they climb the corporate ladder. But we know the story that in a company of 5,000 people, we are not going to have 5,000 CEOs. So not many of us are going to make it. And there are some people who say, no, I'll make more money through lottery. And we also, the statistics of lottery says 18.9 million people play, only one win. So the other option that we have, if we still earn salaries, is to actually spend less than we earn, which is why we spend a lot of time discussing our budget and how to live within our means so that we can leave some money, so that we can start step by step buying some assets to build our wealth. You are not going to build wealth by spending more than you earn, because you need to release some funds to put into investments. And that is why we started with all these other sections before we got to this place, because we said, let's make sure you've got enough money left so that we can talk about investing. And we say, take some of that money and put it in investing, because you are not wealthy, you are not rich, you are not famous, you are not winning a lotto. You're going to have to manage your finances. And of course, if you are going to invest, there's a lot of things that are outside of your control. So for example, what the governor, the Reserve Bank does is outside your control, and it can affect your investment. So those are the things that can affect your investment. You could have invested somewhere. You remember this guy, you invested in Sithole, and then you read in the news one day, you find that this guy actually was doing funny things in Sithole. All your money is gone. And those who read the news will know that companies like PIC, who had invested money, they lost 12 billion rands simply because of the actions of those who led these companies. Again, as an investor, you are not there every day to manage the company, so your money can go away simply because of how the company was managed outside your control. Now, the point I'm bringing across is that we must accept that investments are risky simply because we have no control about the decisions people make. And again, there's risk there. We have no control over what the economy does. As we sit now, we have COVID-19, which has really eroded a lot of investment. A lot of businesses have not been operating for a couple of days, and their values have gone down. And those who have looked at their pension statement will tell you that their pension values, their investments have gone down by 30%. Yes, these things happen and they take time to recover. In fact, I was reading the history of all these big economic events that affect our investments, that they normally take between 80 months and about, I think it was 36 months to recover back to the normal. And again, these are things that are outside our control. And the one thing that I'm highlighting as we think about investing is that investing is a risky business simply because there are things we don't control. But so is life, by the way. You don't control many things, but you still go ahead and live. So the risk is all around. Right. But also the root, and this is a bit of a weird one, the root of building your wealth through your salary can really feel like 40 years in the wilderness that the Israelites took. Because most of us will work for 40 years, and it's starting to feel like the routes that the Israelites took from Egypt to Canaan. But we know that if you were to take the map of Egypt and Canaan and draw a line, you realize that this trip that took them 40 years could have easily taken them 3 to 11 years. If you just draw the line between Egypt and Canaan, you say, how? Why be triangle? And sometimes building your wealth through a salary can really feel like that orange line of that these guys took for 40 years. And that is why I want to emphasize that there is a shorter way to build wealth, but it's difficult, but it's not impossible. If you build wealth through a business, and that's why I'm encouraging entrepreneurship, but done right, because many businesses fail. But if done right, it can build you wealth much faster than through a salary. And let's think about the logic, and I'm going to get into the depth of investment. I just wanted to show you that there are two routes. There's no one way of doing it just through a salary. You can also build wealth through entrepreneurship. And maybe one day you must get experts on entrepreneurship to teach us about this, because it might be a shorter cut, but very difficult. If you think about someone who's employed, you who is employed, you have to sell your skill and your time to just one customer called your employer. an entrepreneur who comes up with a product has up to 7 billion customers. They can sell to as many as 7 billion. Already the fact that they are almost unlimited to how many people they can sell what they have already just opens up the opportunities for building wealth much faster. So business is a quicker way of building wealth, and I would encourage people to start businesses if they really want to build wealth, but do it the right way. You learn about that when someone comes and teaches us about entrepreneurship. But I needed to highlight that so that we also don't rule out that. And of course, we are told 9 out of 10 startups fail, and we all of us then start to focus on the 9 that have failed instead of following the one that has survived and say, what did this one do right so that I go and do that? There are many reasons why businesses fail. I'm not going to get into that, but I just wanted to highlight that. Now, what is investing? What is investing? And I want us to take this definition and unpack it. And I believe once we've unpacked it, we would have demonstrated that investing shouldn't be intimidating, especially if it is something that can give you a better chance to leave an inheritance for your children's children. Especially if it is something that will give you a better chance to afford your future. Some of us have children. I almost said some of us have small children, and I suppose children, by definition, they are younger than us, so they will always be small. Some of us have children, and we have not realized how expensive our children are. And we are relying on hope, and we think hope is a strategy. So investing is important. As soon as I have children, because the future of raising children becomes more expensive as the children grow, investing must be something I understand. But if investing sounds like a complicated thing and it intimidates me, I'm going to run away, or I'm going to throw my money to people like Skumza and lose all the money and have more stress. How can we simplify it? And I want us to this definition, and we'll understand that, you know what, investing is accessible. And perhaps next week, someone who was scared of investing will start investing. Look at the definition. This is a definition that I've taken from the dictionary, and this is what it says. It says investing is committing resources. And I want you to underline that. It doesn't say committing money, it says committing resources. And that's a very important thing. It says committing resources for a period of time, okay, to earn returns, and those returns must compensate me for time, risk, and inflation. And this is what I want us to unpack in the next couple of minutes. And if we unpack this, we would have understood the basics of investing. Now, what are resources? So if you think about a simple definition of a resource is anything that can be used. Now, the definition is saying investing, therefore, is taking anything that can be used and committing it so that I can earn returns. And that's what investing is. So if we think about what resources are, I want to show you how accessible investing is. Time is a resource. Many of us have time. All of us have 24 hours. We must argue one day, because I've heard people say, all of us have 24 hours. What's your excuse? Not all 24 hours are the same, right? 24 hours of a person who doesn't have a car, they include waiting in a queue at a taxi, while the other just drives straight. 24 hours of somebody who doesn't have a helper include a few hours spent preparing children instead of running a business or reading a book. So our 24 hours are not the same, but we all have time, and we can invest it or spend it. So time is a resource. Others spend it, others invest it. What's the other resource that some of us have access to? The people I know, that's a resource. If you really think about what really drives building wealth when people are doing network marketing, it has to do with selling to people you may know, connecting with people. That's a resource someone may use to commit to generate some income. If you really think about if I need to raise funds, if I have enough people in my network, I could do crowd financing. Now that's a resource that I've just used to generate a return. It didn't cost me any money. You know, so those are the type of things we can do. We can invest in our relationships. Instead of spending our relationships to spread gossip, we can spend our relationships to build investments without any cash. What we know, our skills. If you read Exodus chapter 35, verse 35, God is saying this. He says, I have given them all manner of skills. The skills that we have can generate us income. We already understand the idea of using skills to generate returns because we wake up every day to go and sell a skill. So we understand that. That can help us to make more money. Did you know that sometimes if you want to invest in a company, you could actually go and sell them your skills in exchange for shares, costing you no money. Another way, investing is accessible, and of course, money is another source of resources. 3 out of 4 resources that we can invest don't include money, right? And what do I mean by that? I mean, for example, okay, maybe I can give you another example another time. I want to just run through this. If we were to talk about time, I want to talk about time as a resource that can be invested to earn returns. An average person spends about 96 hours watching TV every month. And I want you to look at it. I mean, we are watching a series which is 30 minutes. Then another one comes up, it's 30 minutes. You're watching the news, you're watching this. We spend about 96 hours a month watching TV. Do you know that by the time you reach the age of 65, you would have watched 9 years of TV in your life? Now, I'm not even counting social media or anything. 9 years. 9 years. 9 years is equivalent to a degree, an honors, a PhD spent watching TV. Now, these days, you could spend and invest that time learning a skill and using that skill to generate income without costing you a lot of money. So we can invest our time and start making some money, right? Let alone what we spend on social media. We can spend that time learning a skill, learning a new skill that I can use to either start a business or to actually go and sell it to a business in exchange for shares. I've seen many people who are able to do that. So the point is, investing is not only about money, it is about resources. That's why the definition says committing resources, not just money. Anyway, I don't want to belabor the point. I was going to show you how much time we actually waste, which we could use to actually start investing in any income out of it. If you think about relationships, for example, we spend too much time gossiping. We could be using these relationships to build businesses. We could be using these relationships outside price. We could use the relationship to put money together and have some crowdfunding. These are the type of things that we are able to do. Some of us, through relationships, we've been able to avoid going to interviews. We can make a few phone calls and suddenly we're able to land a job, to land a transaction, to land a contract through relationships. If we're to invest in relationships, we are halfway there in building our world. This is part of investing. Our skills, back in the day, you know that people didn't really exchange money. They would exchange the product that they've come up with from their skills, and therefore they exchange those products for another product. It's still happening. People are bartering their skills for shares. They're bartering their skills for some money. You are able to do that. Now, the other interesting thing about investing is that, so remember the definition said, investing is committing resources for a period of time to earn returns. There's a difference between saving and investing. And of course, when Christians, Christians are very interesting, especially the Adventists. We can define many things. When they say, when you are saved, you are set aside for holy use. Now, saving is exactly that. Saving is, in my budget, I decide that this money, I will set it aside. In other words, I won't spend it on my normal expenses. I will put it aside. Investing then is taking what I've saved and then I commit it to earn returns. So saving is taking your money, putting it under the mattress. It is not earning returns, but at least it is saved from being spent. Investing is taking money and putting it somewhere where it's gonna grow. That is investing. So for example, if we are taking money in a stock fund and we are just throwing it in a bank account, we are saving, we are not investing. Only when we take the money and go and buy a property as a stock fund, we are now investing. Because investing says that I take the money I've set aside, I go and commit it where it will earn returns, where it will grow, right? If I don't do that, I might even be eroding the value of the money. If I put it under the mattress, I'm putting it at risk of somebody taking the money. And I know when I was growing up, we used to think saving money is putting it under the mattress. And of course, there was only one mattress in the home because it was a small house. And any mattress, anything under the mattress belonged to my grandmother. And that's the problem with saving. you are putting money where it's accessible to many people. Only when you commit it to earn returns. And what are those returns? I put it in a place like property where I'm earning. So returns basically is I get a gain. And the gain can come from the money that I've put growing. So in other words, it's called capital growth. So I put in 1,000, tomorrow I come back, it's 1,200. Or I put in 1,000, when I go back and get it, I get it as 1,000, but every month I was getting interest. So I was getting income. Or I put in 1,000 in a company. When the company makes profit, it calls all of us who have put in money in the company and says, we're going to share these profits with you. When they share profits with me, I still own the same share of the company, but I'm getting profits, which are called dividends. That is investing. Investing must give you returns. Otherwise, if it's saving, it's just under the mattress, it's just in a normal bank account, it is not giving you returns. In fact, it's at risk of disappearing. And that is what investing is. It must give you returns. And returns can be income, which is like interest. It could be dividends, which is the company sharing profits with its shareholders, or it can be growth. The property, when we bought it for 500,000, yes, we are getting rentals every month, which is income, but the 500,000 property, if we were to go and sell it tomorrow, it is now worth 550,000. So we have earned two types of returns. We have earned returns from the rent we are getting, which is income, but we also earned return because the property is now worth more. That is investing. There must be returns. Right. Now, the question is, those returns, right? I've spoken to you what the returns are, right? So I'm going to skip that. The returns must be enough to cover a few things. If you go back to the definition again, it says the returns must compensate me, the person who has taken my resources and committed them somewhere. Those returns, they'll be worth my while if they can compensate me for the time that I've put the money in them. So if you think about what investing means that I've decided that instead of buying ice cream, I'm going to take this money and go and commit it for a few months, a few years to something else. So I've actually delayed gratifying myself so that I can earn some returns. So the returns must compensate me for actually delaying enjoying my ice cream. Because delaying gratification is a very, very painful thing, guys. It is so painful. That is why you find people like Esau who couldn't really wait. He could give up anything just to eat. It's a very difficult thing, this thing of delaying gratification. So my returns must compensate me for that thing. But my returns must also compensate me for inflation. So if you think about it, if I had 10 rands today, that was left in my spending and my budget. And then I say, okay, I've attended this lecture on investing, so I'm not going to spend this 10 rand. I was going to buy bread with this 10 rands because bread today was 10 rands. Instead of buying bread today, I'm saying, you know what, I'm going to invest this 10 rands. And then I'll go and access this 10 rand after a year. Now, a year from now, bread is now 12 rands. Now, I gave up the opportunity to buy bread today when it was 10 rands. When I go back 12 months later, the returns would have been enough if I can still afford bread. If I go back to get my 10 rands and I get there, it's 11 rands. Yes, I celebrate, it's now no longer 10 rands. But if I get there, it used to buy me bread. And now it can no longer buy me bread because bread is now 12 rands. Those returns have not been. In fact, my money has lost its buying power. I could have afforded bread if I spent money on my bread 12 months ago. I went and invested it. Now I can't afford bread. These returns were not enough. That is why then the definition then says the returns must compensate me for inflation. Last night, if you remember last night, there was, I think it was Stabile Spanner, who asked a question about hyperinflation, where because of inflation, what I used to afford in the morning, I no longer afford. And that's the thing, returns must compensate us for that. And you'll understand why I'm unpacking this definition just now. And of course, and many of us have seen the price of oros. It always irritates me. So okay, I'm not gonna go through this because we're gonna have And then the last thing that's important about investing is that when I'm investing, I am taking a risk. I've already knew the guys like in Sithole, where I've put my money in there and I've just taken a risk that the company is being run by criminals and those criminals might erode all my investment. I need to be compensated for taking this risk. And that is why you hear clever people telling us that if the risk is very high, the returns then must be very high. And it's simply coming from the definition of investing that says, if I take more risk, I must be compensated more for the risk that I've taken. And that is why then, when you look at, let's forgive Mr. Sithole now, when you look at the relationship between the risk I'm taking in investing and returns, you realize that the higher the risk, the higher the returns I must get. So if you look at this graph, for example, if I'm investing in the money market, and I will tell you what the money market just now is, okay? So don't worry about the terminology. We're going to unpack a number of these things in the next 15 minutes, for about 15 minutes. So if I invest in the money market, which means I'm putting my money in the bank, where it's relatively safe. Why is the money relatively safe in a bank? Because banks, remember, my money is not safe in the bank if I were to come back in 2 months' time, I want to withdraw my money, then the bank says, hey, we have to withdraw abantu and akusena mali. Now, banks are regulated by the Reserve Bank, and they are always asked to keep certain reserves as for the deposit, so that when we come back and get our money, we find our money. And that's why then they are seen to be relatively safe because of the regulation. And because the risk is low, then my returns are low, so I'm being compensated for the level of the risk. Remember, the definition is saying that the returns that I get from my investment must compensate me for the risk I've taken. But if I go and look at investing in shares, so I go and invest in a startup, someone is starting a company, they are untested, the risk is very high that they might fail because they are new in the industry, they still need to go and get economies of scale, they might be kicked out by bigger players, so the risk is very high, and I better be paid a lot for taking a chance on this person. So that's the relationship, right? So I'm trying to unpack the definition so that we are not intimidated by it. That is why then, if I go and invest in the money that I just leave in my bank account, it doesn't give me a lot of interest because I'm taking no risk. It's an easy one. But then when I start saying to the bank, I am putting this money for 2 years, I'm then giving the bank an opportunity to take the money I've deposited with them and go and lend it to Ntomzodwa, who is taking out a personal loan. So they go and take a bit more risk and earn some returns. And then they compensate me a bit more for that because it's a bit more risky. No. So that's why then, as I move from investing in cash, I go and invest in shares. The returns become a bit higher because the risk is a bit higher. So do you see that relationship between risk and investment? That's why then the definition says that your returns will be as high as the risk you are taking. Okay, and that's the rule of thumb. Now, that's the one thing. And again, remember what I said, that your returns must also compensate you for delaying gratification. This thing is painful to know that I could have done this and that with my money, but I want to delay my gratification. I must be compensated for that. That is why then, when I invest my money for longer, the returns are much higher because I'm compensated for waiting a bit longer, right? What does this then mean? It means that if I am investing, even a simple investment as investing in the bank. So if I'm investing in a call account, which we'll talk about just now, if I invest in a call account, if it's a 7 days notice, the returns will be smaller than if it is a 60 days notice, because then I'm delaying my gratification longer than the 7 days, then the returns I can get are much higher. That is why then the returns are higher, because the definition says if I delay longer, I must be paid a bit more. And that is the whole relationship. Now, the other important thing about investing is that your returns must also compensate you for tax. You know, tax can eat a lot of your returns. Look at this. If I'm investing in cash, so if I invest in cash, it means I put money with the bank and the bank, the returns I'm getting are called interest. Interest is normally taxed at 45%. So if I get interest of 10,000, if I'm on the highest tax bracket, I will pay 4,500 of that 10,000 as tax, which means my returns have been eroded by tax. So it's very also important that I make enough returns to deal with tax. Of course, there are some exemptions that you get, etc., etc. You will go through it. It's written when you get the video. You will go through these slides at your own leisure. I'm not going to get into that now. But here's the other thing, and this is where it gets a bit interesting. And remember, we are talking about the basics here, so that the next time you think about investing, you are not intimidated. Now, there is no way, and I've had people who are telling us what to invest in by just looking at our faces. Nobody can look at my face and know where I must put my money. Where I must invest depends on what my goals are. And that is important. Now that we've understood the definition of investing, it then says, I don't just invest anywhere by just looking at you. I must understand what your goals are. That is why, if you remember last night in the Q&A, when we were talking about financial advisors and financial planners, I stressed the importance of sitting down with a planner, not someone who's selling you products, with a planner who will spend some time with you understanding what your goals are. Once I know what your goals are, I can be able to tell you where to invest. I can't just look at you and say, my brother, go and invest in this thing. I must understand what your goals are. Now, why is that important? Remember, I've said that your returns depend on your time, on the time of investing. But your time of investing depends on what you want to do with your money and when do you want to do it, right? So that's very important. So for example, if I have short-term goals are the goals that, for example, and the goal is simply, what do I want to do with this money? Why do I need money? Right? So for example, it's June now. I need to go to Mnambiti in December, which means it's in 6 months' time. And I know that when I go to Mnambiti, I don't go there empty-handed. But also when I go to Mnambiti, there are toll gates, there's petrol, and all of that stuff. So my goal for Mnambiti is a short-term goal because it's in 6 months' time. Because it's in 6 months' time, I can't afford to be investing in a place that's gonna need me to wait 18 months, because 18 months is too late for my goal. So your goals will tell you where to invest. And that's very important, that the discussion of investing starts with what are my goals. But the other important thing about goals, guys, is that remember when we started talking on Monday and said that our brains are very lazy. If I have not labeled something, I normally don't do it. But if I've labeled it, I normally stick to it. Once I know what my goals are, I know that this money is for this goal, then I'm able to measure them. So or if I've got short-term goals, I've got medium-term goals, I've got long-term goals, the goals will determine where I put my money. Let me give you some examples. And of course, your goals must be, we know the story of SMART goals, specific. And what that really means is that it must be specific. What, why, who, when, where. For example, you can't say, no, I want to invest because I want to be rich. That's very vague. I must say that I want to invest so that I can have R1 million cash available in 12 months' time. Now, that goal is very specific because it tells me how much, so that I know the goal, when, what's the time period. That already tells me where I can invest this money, right? Etc., etc. Right? So I'm not going to go through all of that. So for example, if my goal is to take my children to school, I must be specific and say what kind of education I want to give my children. Do I want to take them to a model C? Do I want to take them to a lower level private school? Do I want to take them to the upper level private school? Need, but I'm already seeing that well is not going to be at varsity tomorrow. So I must work out how much varsity will cost when they start. Now inflation comes into play, and already tells me how much I will need when they get to varsity. Because it's a long-term goal, and it's a long-term goal, then it means I can invest in shares, for example, because shares perform better in the long term than in the short term. But because the child must go to crash in 18 months' time, it's a short-term goal. If I invest in shares, I'll get to month 18 and find that the shares are not performing. Shares perform better in the long term. So because it's short term, perhaps I may need to invest in the money market because it's less risky. Do you see that your goal will tell you where to invest? I can't just tell you where to invest without knowing what your goal is, right? So those are the things that are going to tell us those things. So for example, if I need to invest for a wedding, I then work it out. The lobola will be paid in 6 months' time. So that's a short-term goal. And therefore, I can't take chances with the lobola, and therefore I must put it in a short-term kind of investment. The wedding, when is going to be the wedding? How much is it going to cost? By the way, one day we must talk about the cost of weddings, because an average wedding that does the white wedding, the black wedding, and all those things will set you back about 350,000 rand, right? So we must think about those things. So I'm going to skip all of that. And therefore, you invest in the money market for the short term, and these are the different options that you have. I'm going to talk about it just now, but I'm just trying to show you the link between goals and where to invest. If I've got a medium-term goal, so this is a goal that is longer than, say, 18 months, but it's not longer than 7 years. So it could be, for example, I want to go and renovate back home in 5 years' time. I want to do a nice anniversary in 5 years' time. Right, so I want to spend money for it so that I don't go and borrow for an investor. I want to start a business. I want to quit my job in 5 years' time. So I then put together a quit my job fund. But I know that my goal is medium term, and therefore it's going to tell me where to invest, etc., etc. Right. So those are the things that we look at. So your goals will tell you where to invest. Long-term goals, like I want to build generational wealth. When I retire at 65, I want to have 10 million. So these are goals that are older than 7 years, like retirement, like I want to take my children to university. Those are the type of goals that tell you when to invest. Now look at this. Shares, if I were to invest in shares for the long term, even though the shares are fluctuating every day in the short term, if I were to draw a straight line, is going up. So in the long term, shares perform better. Even now, right now, we are seeing COVID-19. There are certain companies that are not doing well. But if you look at the history of how long it takes it takes economies to recover when there's these things, you are told that it takes between 18 months and 5 years, which means that if I'm investing in shares, in the long term, they start to recover, they start to climb up. Why is that the case? If the board doesn't perform, we fire the board and get a new board that puts together a turnaround plan, and turnaround plan will take about 18 months to do. So in the long term, these things kind of work out. But if I'm in the short term, I'm going to lose my money, maybe I shouldn't put my money. And that is the whole point. And of course, it also depends on your risk profile. In other words, can you afford to take risk? If I'm investing for a wedding, can I afford to lose all my money? No, maybe I won't afford to lose all my money. So maybe I mustn't take too much risk, even though it's a long-term thing. So those are the type of things that tell you where should you invest. I don't look at you and say you can invest here and invest there. So I'm going to skip all of this. You'll pick it up in the video, but these are the type of things that we look at. So I want to then end off by then just telling you the different asset classes people can invest in and how they work. And I'm really going to take about let's see, I'm going to take out about 7 minutes on this so that we just understand. Remember, these are basics of investing, so we create awareness. This thing will take us too much time. Now, there are 4 basic asset classes you can invest in. Remember, assets are things that make you money. And remember, if you want to build wealth, remember what we said, if you want to build wealth, you must be buying assets. And there are different things you can invest in that make you money. You can invest in cash. So for example, I put my money in the bank and it's a particular account that can generate me some interest. That's the cash investment. There's another type of class that we can invest in, which is government bonds. Government bonds is when companies are trying to raise money so that they can expand. For example, Eskom wants to build power station. They want to raise money, so they go and borrow money from people or from companies. These are called bonds. That's why they go to Davos and they say, we have investors who wanted to invest 400 and whatever million rands. That is what they are buying, bonds. And of course, property, which is something we understand very well. And it's not just houses. It can be property for malls. It can be property for companies. We understand property. And of course, there's shares. There's obviously livestock. There's oil. There's all these other things we call commodities. I'm not going to get into it. If I want to invest in the money market, this is where I'm earning interest. So I go and put money And at the end of the term of investment, I get back the money I've put in, but all along I was receiving interest. So the money doesn't grow, but it earns me income called interest, right? So that's the money market, right? It normally works for short-term investments. The returns are very low, but the risk is also very low. In other words, the risk of losing my money is not very high, right? So because of the regulations in the money market. Of course, we know that there's VBS and Sambo, so there are some risks that are there, but normally these are short-term. So these are for my goals that are short-term. And here you are avoiding the risk of fluctuation. So you can go to your bank and approach them and get a call account. These will earn you very small returns, right? So you can read this at your own leisure. I'm not going to go through all of that. I'm just creating that awareness. So these are the type of things. Call account, meaning that I'm gonna call on this man. I'm gonna give them a notice in 7 days, in 60 days, etc. And depending on your notice period, you see what I was saying about the amount of time you invest can determine how much returns you have. Can you see that the 7 days can give you up to 5%? They don't give you a lot. Yet the 45 days is giving you more returns because you are compensated more for waiting longer. But it's still a small return, right? So those are the type of things you can do. Usually pensioners love this because remember, when I'm already a pensioner, I can't take a lot of risk because my only source of income is my pension money. So I don't want to gamble with it. So they normally invest in the money market. That's why the pensioners get very angry when the governor of the Reserve Bank say they are lowering interest rates, while the rest of us who are in debt are excited because they are thinking you are threatening our investment. Anyway, let me run through that. And of course, they have some special rates for pensioners in those things. How do you get into that? You can go to your bank and ask to have a money market. You can talk to financial services companies like or I'm not going to name them because but yeah, you can go to those places. And of course you can go to, okay, I'm not going to repeat all of that. Of course there are fees involved in all of that, so I'm going to skip all of that. You will read that yourself. I want to just tell you about the second class. The second class is bonds. As I said, if there's any infrastructure, if a company is trying to expand, instead of issuing new shares and getting other shareholders, they normally go and borrow money. So bonds is simply you are lending money to a company for a period of time. So they normally like 2 years, and then they pay you interest in exchange for the money that you've invested. And we can get into the bond market. You can buy your bonds from, I think we can pay from there. Let me just skip all of this. Don't ask me why I put Nkandla there. Don't be upset. I've gone past that. So you can go to Treasury Department of the Treasury Department of Finance. You can buy on the website. You can buy bonds at the post office. You can buy bonds at Pick and Pay. That's how you will invest in them. The slide is there. You can see the details there, right? Of course, you can invest in property. And we've spoken about property a bit. You guys understand property. You can also invest in shares. What a share is really is exactly that. We take a company and divide it into different slices, and you can buy a little slice of the company, and it gives you a right to vote in meetings. It gives you a right when the company is sharing its profit with those who are shareholders. You are able to then get a share of those profits. That's what shares are, but they are very risky, as we've spoken. Let me end here because, as I said, this thing can take up too much time. But I've already touched on the different classes of investment, but I don't think we have enough time to go through all these slides. But you can also invest in shares. And maybe let me just say this because I think these things can become quite intimidating. Let me just say this, that you don't have to have a lot of money to be an investor. So let me just go to that slide because I think it's a very important slide because it can really free up a lot of people who get stressed, right? So let me go through that very quickly. Let me find it. There it is. There it is, right? So of course, if I try and go and say I've got 500 Rand, I want to buy shares in Apple. Well, one Apple share as it is today will cost you 5,700. Now you are saying, I can't be a shareholder, right? So there are ways to invest in shares that may be cheaper. This is what they call unit trust. It's a stock file that went to boarding school. all that all does is that we pool money together like we do in Stockpels, and then the unit trust itself will then take all my 500 rands A2 and they will add up to a few millions. And then the trust goes and buys Apple shares for all the guys who have invested in the trust. So your 500 rands gives you access to an Apple share without necessarily affording the Apple share. So don't think that you need a lot of money to be an investor. You can invest without necessarily having a lot of money, because there are different ways to access these shares without necessarily buying them directly. That's what I wanted us to touch on, but we don't have time. But really, it was creating awareness, and what was important for me is that we actually remove the jargon from the investment definition, so we realize that it's something that's accessible to all of us. I'm going to end here. I'm very sorry that we seem to have ended without covering many things, but it's very broad, guys. But I hope we've learned something tonight. Thank you.